we're going to get going with Jennifer Wheeler. And I'm going to do a brief introduction, and she's going to take it away. She completed wildlife management and game ranching program with the School of Field Studies in Africa in 1989. In 1991, she started working with the BLM in Lakeview, Oregon, beautiful country out there, where she did botany range, water quality testing, and surface mine compliance. In 93, she graduated HSU with a Bachelor's of Science in Rangeland Resource Science. And in 1993, she became a permanent botanist with the Arcata Field Office of the Bureau of Land Management. And at that, I'm going to hand it over to Jennifer. And thank you all for coming tonight. Looks like we're at about 120 people, Jennifer. So,
okay, great. Thank you, Michael. And Carol, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to have to do a couple things here, share screen and queue up the presentation. So here we go. And let's see, those are my kids. Bonus information. All right, and just take a second. I think there's a little bit of a delay, so I'm gonna try and go a little bit slower when I move through the slides, just to give what I'm saying in the slides a chance to catch up. Anyway, thank you everyone for coming. I can't hear anybody talking, so I'm in my living room. It sounds like I'm talking to myself, but I know there are people there, and hopefully my dog won't bark and cause an embarrassing intermission that we didn't plan on. I just want to start off with a little bit of a note on BLM land in general. For those of you that don't know, the Bureau of Land Management is part of the Department of Interior. National Park Service and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service are part of the Department of Interior as well. The BLM is the largest landowner in the United States, with most of the land concentrated west of the Mississippi in the western 13 states, with 248 million surface acres and 700 million subsurface acres. I just think that's really interesting. And we are managed by the Federal Land Policy and Management Act of 1976, which is BLM's Organic Act, which dictates our multiple use and conservation mandate. So just a little plug on the BLM. Locally, we manage over, the Arcata Field Office manages over 200,000 acres distributed across 2 ecoregions, being the Coast Range and the Klamath Mountains High Northern Coast Range. And that's out of 12 ecoregions in the state of California, which is a really diverse state. And I wanted to add a little note about that. The California Floristic Province takes in a little bit of southwestern Oregon and Baja California, but California and the Floristic Province is a biodiversity hotspot in that the Floristic Province has over 8,000 native plants and approximately 3,400 endemic species. That is species that have evolved and persist only in the California Floristic Province. And not only that, the same area has lost over 70% of the primary vegetation, which makes it really important for us to conserve the biodiversity and wild areas that we still have in this state, because there are a lot of codependent species that need those plants aside from the intrinsic value that they have. Another note on why California is such a diverse hotspot, it's fourfold. We have a Mediterranean climate, our wet winters and our dry summers, which puts a lot of evolutionary and adaptive pressures on plants. Also, we have some dramatic topography in the state with multiple mountain ranges and valleys and deserts. We also have a very long state, so we cross a lot of latitudes, and also we have a wide variety of soils and geology and parent material, which brings me to the Red Mountain, South Fork Eel River, the Red Mountain unit in the South Fork Eel River Wilderness. So this is where my presentation really begins. This is a parcel or an area that the BLM manages. You can see from the air, the soils are reddish. This is, I like to call it an edaphic sky island, which just means that it's a unique, geographically isolated area of unique soils at elevation. And so there's a lot of endemism here, a lot of unique evolution. You can see the reddish soils. There's a lot of serpentinite and ultramafic soils, a lot of weathering, iron, chromium, copper. There's a typical of serpentine. You have a low calcium and high magnesium ratio. So that puts a lot of stresses on plants and a lot of adaptations. Normal, like, plants that grow on sedimentary soils and can handle more competition don't do well on serpentine because they're not adapted for it. So you get a lot of pristine plant communities here that haven't had a lot of invasive pressures from non-native plants because they just simply can't survive. Anyway, you can see where, actually, maybe somebody cannot, hopefully, I can't hear anybody, but hopefully you can see the mouse when I decide to point to things. Here's a little bit how,
Jennifer, we can see it. You're good.
You can see that? Okay, great, thanks. So this is how the BLM lands overlay the Red Mountain unit. You can see that the majority of the red soil is owned and managed by the Bureau of Land Management. And then this large area right here is owned by the state of California, the Department of Fish and Wildlife. Here's a little bit what the area looks like on top. That's me and my coworker, Lisa. And then another thing that I'm including in this presentation that's maybe a bonus that you didn't expect, I'm going to include a lot of native pollinators, especially when they have landed on a native plant. Although butterflies do nectar on a lot of different species, a lot of times the larvae are monophagous, meaning that they only will consume the leaves of a particular plant. And that's really important for conservation too, because they're so codependent and co-evolved, and sometimes the butterfly is really limited to just very limited plant communities. And so I like to highlight the diversity of plants, but also the diversity of pollinators that frequent those plants to add some animation to the plants and some additional value and appreciation. So this is, and I am not an entomologist. I had to learn a lot of these butterflies just for this show. So this is Edith's checker spot. Two of these species, subspecies to this butterfly are threatened. The Kino checker spot and the Bay checker spot butterfly, and it's on Allium falcifolium. Which is sickle-leaved onion. Okay, and then what I wanted to talk about at the beginning before we simply go on a tour of BLM lands and beautiful wildflowers found on them, I wanted to talk about the new species of Lomatium that was named recently. So just a note on the genus Lomatium, it's in the Apiaceae family, which also contains food crops like celery and parsley. Another name for the Apiaceae is umbelliferae, which is named for the compound umbels. That name isn't used currently, but you will see it in older manuals. There's approximately 75 species in the genus of Lomatium. Many are edible, some are deadly toxic though, so you need to know which member you are working with. Common names for Lomatium are biscuit root, fernleaf biscuit root, desert parsley, and Indian parsley. And it was, this plant was extensively, this genus was extensively used in Native American culture and was a staple food. You could cook the roots, dry or ground it into flour, store it as biscuits. Apparently, Lomatium tastes like celery, parsnips, or stale biscuits, and that makes sense since it's in the celery family. And then a little note on morphology. So this smaller area right here is an umbel. These fruits come down to a central point, and this ray represents one stalk of one portion. Basically, you get a whole lot of these units clustered together into a larger umbel. So you have an umbel of these little umbels, which makes it a compound umbel, or in the Apiaceae family. So this is a ray, and we're going to talk about a little bit of morphology in a minute, so I just wanted to go over this. This is an involucre right here, this little crown of bracts, these bractlets, this involucre. And then these are the fruits of the, of this example here. They're called schizocarps, and they break into two mericarps. And along a line of commissure, it's called. And when you come over here to this graph, one of the things they look at is when these two mericarps break in half. And this is a cross section of it. You have these oil tubes here. And the number of oil tubes that occur on this flat surface when the fruit breaks apart is a character for telling species apart. So that's why I'm just pointing it out. Okay, I didn't miss one, did I? No. All right. So two of the most common Lomatium that occur, well, two of the Lomatium that do occur on Red Mountain, Lomatium dasycarpum. It looks like this. The vegetation's a little bit gray-green, and it's really tomentose and hairy all over, including the petals. You can see up here that the petals have hair on them. And there's another Lomatium that grows in our area, a Lomatium macrocarpum, which is big seed Lomatium. But one of the ways you can tell them apart, because it's sometimes very hard to tell them apart, they look a lot alike. The petals of Lomatium macrocarpum are glabrous, or they have no hair on the petals. So you can see that they are just hairless, versus up here on dasycarpum that they have hair. So this one's really abundant. And then there's this other one, and this is all over Red Mountain proper on the red soils. You can see the red soils in the background. And over the years, and I know that it had many names because I could never get it to fit, but you could see the herbarium specimens from UC Herbarium and Humboldt State Herbarium that over the years, from 1942 to 1977, it's been called three different things: Lomatium congdonii, Lomatium tracii, and Lomatium engelmannii. And even some of the collectors, like Tom Nelson here, he's called it two different things. And I think I saw some other people called it two different things. Anyway, it's confusing, it's tough. And sometimes the flowers are older and fading into different colors, and sometimes the character is a little inconsistent. Anyway, so there was a lot of confusion around this particular Lomatium. And then Barbara Wilson called me one day with the Carrick's working group, and she had been contracted to write a new flora for Lomatium for the Flora of North America. And she was aware of the taxonomic issues with the Lomatium on Red Mountain. And so we got together. I helped fund the research, the morphological study, and the genetic research. And they did the work, and we got it done and got the plant described. And oops, wow, that's touchy. So the thanks really go to Kevin Mason, who came out and worked with me and did the collections. And he traveled all over the place, being Barbara's gopher, bringing back plant samples for analysis. Edward Willey is a native Wailaki Native American who's local that contributed some cultural information. And the name, the specific epithet of the plant, James Smith was consulted with, and Barbara was the lead. And I just really facilitated the project and did a little proofreading. So here's the plant. It's called Wailaki Lomatium, or Lomatium kogholiini. Kogholiini is how you say it. It's a Wailaki word. It means daylight coming. And this whole area of Mendocino County, Red Mountain, is in the Wailaki ancestral territory. So several of us felt that it was appropriate to name it after the Wailaki native peoples, and especially since it was such an important plant to them culturally. And here we are comparing all the strict serpentine endemics. You can see all of these plants are strict serpentine endemics, so it naturally they were, you know, people when they were trying to identify this Lomatium were looking to those. But if you look over here at the upper right hand corner, you can see, actually my map is buried by my inset video, but I know it's down there. You can see all of the serpentine spread across California and Southern Oregon. And if I could point to it, there's a very small area. Maybe I can move it. There's a tiny little dot right here. I don't know if you can see that. Here's my mouse, right there. That's where Red Mountain is. This disjunct little piece of serpentine way off out of these main bands of serpentine. And then when you go and look over here, Lomatium kogholiini, which is probably the most closely, and definitely is the most closely related plant to Lomatium kogholiini. It's hard to say. It occurs way down here in the foothills of the Sierra Nevada. So it's really very far removed from Red Mountain, which occurs right here. And then engelmannii, which note has white or purplish flowers, it occurs way up here in the Klamath range. And then you have tracei lumping together up here. So there's no, it's not really an easy connection to say that this was the same as this or this or this. If you look over here, and we don't need to go all the way through this, but I did outline the characters that had the most distinctive difference and the least amount of overlap, because that's the thing, as you look through these species, morphological characteristics, there's a lot of overlap. Engelmannii and tracei, I think, are sufficiently different that they shouldn't have been confused as much. Like you can see that the bractlets on the involusul are a different shape with these two. They have bractlets that are present, where over here they're usually absent. The flowers are different color here, white or purplish. But over here, the Lomatium morphologically has 4 to 7 rays, central rays to those smaller schizocarp rays. And then the kogholiini has 6 to 18. Many more. So there's only just a little bit of overlap. And also the oil ducts on the commissure, there are 4 to 6 in the Wailaki Lomatium and only 2 to 4 in kogholiini. And you can look at these other characteristics and you know, the ranges get a little bit unique, but there's still so much overlap. That's really, you would be struggling to morphologically tell which plant you had. So I think this is a good clue, and not only that, just geographically where you are, because the genetics really backed it up. This is a cladogram, and I can answer questions later on this. I'll try and keep it brief. The thicker lines are where there's 100% certainty. It means that of the 3 different types of tests that they run, maximum parsimony, and I have notes on it. Well, I don't need to go into that, but I'm not going to get to that level of detail. But there are 3 levels of genetic assays that they run, and it was 100%. The results come out 100% the same in all 3 tests. So these are really, really certain, and you can see that the split between kogholiini and kogholiini are pretty solidly split. And when there's a triangle here like this, it means that there were more than 1 sample tested and that they all came out the same. And you can see tracei genetically sorts out way up here, and engelmannii is below this branch, but kogholiini, which is in the foothills of the Sierra Nevada, and our Red Mountain Wailaki, or Wailaki Lomatium, they are distinctly different, although they did evolve more recently from each other. And then I tried to round up pictures of each of them to show you. It's hard to find good pictures of them, but here's Lomatium engelmannii, Lomatium kogholiini. You can see that there's just 4 rays here, 1, 2, 3, 4. Jumping over to kogholiini, you can see I counted 11, a lot more. So it fits that, that generalization on the morphological characters for fewer rays and to more rays here. I'm not gonna show you a cross section of a schizocarp in the oil tubes. You'll just have to take my word for it. Oh, and there was a little confusion when the taxonomists were looking at other herbarium specimens. There was a sighting of a specimen of Lomatium tracei near Red Mountain, but it turns out that was incorrect too. Turned out it was Lomatium caruifolium, which is Lomatium of sedimentary soils, and it wasn't tracei at all. So that was another mistake historically that might have led other taxonomists astray when they were trying to identify the Wailaki Lomatium. Anyway, that's just a little bit of the story of the Wailaki Lomatium, and now I'm just gonna go on tour guide. So my criteria for including plants in a geographic area was, are they rare? Are they beautiful? Was it a great picture? Does it have pollinators on it? And do I think it's cool? So this is a very biased, subjective tour of plants that I've encountered in the field that I really like. And so this is Mendocino gentian, or Gentiana satidra. And Cypripedium californica, it's in the Orchidaceae family, California lady slipper. And I should say Gentiana satidra is a CNPS 1B plant and a BLM sensitive plant. This one, 1B is rare threatened in California and elsewhere. And CNPS list 4 is a limited distribution plant. And here's another shot of it. And this is, let's see, it's another viola, it's pine violet. There we go. Viola lobata. And Streptanthus breweri in the Brassicaceae family. And Lupinus lepidus, variety lobii, dwarf mountain lupin. Oh, and this was a flush of Xerophyllum tenax, a bear grass, after the Red Mountain fire. I had never seen a flush like this, and it was just beautiful. This is Sedum eastwoodii. This is a Red Mountain endemic, Red Mountain stone crop, and it is a federal species of concern. It was a candidate for many years, but at present it's a species of concern. And this is also a federal species of concern and a Red Mountain endemic, Kellogg's buckwheat. And Arabis macdonaldiana, the first endangered plant under the Endangered Species Act. Little known fact, McDonald's rock cress. Okay, now we're gonna take a little leap over to the Butte Creek Management Area. And just for orientation, here's Humboldt Bay, Lolita, Fortuna. So you just head out Highway 36 past Bridgeville, and BLM has, move this away, 2 blocks of land out here. This is Larrabee Buttes and this is Butte Creek. Both have roaded access, public access to them. And here the soils are just our regular Franciscan sandstone sedimentary origin. But there's a lot of diversity here, and things that I've seen here that I haven't seen in other places. So here we go. So this is Silene bolanderi. It used to be a subspecies of hookeri. It's really similar, but in the more recent treatments, it's separated into its own species. Oops, hang on a sec. Hit the wrong button. And Erythronium oregonum, Oregon fawn lily. Silver bush lupin, Lupinus albifrons, variety Colinus. Kekiella corymbosa, red beard tongue. And that's another California endemic. And Douglas sandwort, Minuartia douglasii. Collinsia grandiflora, giant blue-eyed Mary on the left, and mosquito bill, Primula hendersonii on the right. This is Thalictrum fendleri, or meadow-rue. I think this is a cool plant. So it's dioecious, so it has male plants and female plants, and they are wind pollinated. There's also a parade of Clarkia up there. So Clarkia gracilis on the left, Clarkia gracilis gracilis, Clarkia rhomboidea, or diamond Clarkia, Clarkia consena, red ribbons, Clarkia amina, and Clarkia purpurea quadrivulnera, with some unknown beetles that I couldn't identify on them. Streptanthus tortuosus, mountain jewel flower. This is a colored, color thematic slide here, you'll see. I threw in the largest, succinctus largus bugs for color. And Aphelon fasciculatum used to be orobanche, clustered broom rape. And this picture is from the day before yesterday. My seasonal was up there and caught that beautiful shot with Phacelia in the background, but I'm not sure if it's Nemeralis or Aegina in the background. Monardella villosa, some coyote mint, the mint family. American dogwood on the right, Cornus sericea. Little giant white wake robin, Trillium albidum. What a wonderland. Almelancure alnifolia, serviceberry. And Mimulus is changed to Diplacus Kelloggi, Kellogg's monkey flower. True baby stars is now Leptosiphon bicolor instead of Linanthus. And everybody's favorite, Calypso bulbosa, or fairy slipper, with a little two-eyed violet underneath, Viola oscillata. And here's another viola, Primorsa, or canary violet. This one's really much more common in the grasslands. And then this one's in the wet ditches, seeps, and moist areas, Viola glabella, stream violet. Oh, and here's a few bees, native bees, and I don't know which bees they are. Maybe Pete Haggard's on and he can tell us at the end, but here's a native bee on Delphinium, a native bee on California poppy. Here's a great shot of a native bee approaching the silver bush lupin. It's a beautiful one. And then here we get a female dotted blue butterfly and an ornate checkered beetle on Eriogonum nudum auriculatum. So much going on. And that's a morning cloak in the upper left, not on a plant, but it's beautiful, so I included it anyway. And then we have a dusky wing on Dichelostoma capitatum, and I think that's a cabbage white on the blue dix, the Dichelostoma. And here we get a pale swallowtail on cobweb thistle, which is one of our native perennial thistles. Pale swallowtail on Limnanthes douglasii, subspecies Nevea, the snow white meadowfoam. And western tiger swallowtail, Papilio rutulus on mock orange, Philadelphus lewisii. The parade continues. Greater fritillary on Berberis or Oregon grape. Couldn't see enough to tell which Oregon grape it was. Mylita crescent on the Eriogonum, and the Lorquin's admiral on Salix on willow. And a northern checkered spot on Eriophyllum linatum or woolly sunflower. And this is all at Butte Creek, just in a short period of time. Oh, this one on the left, this big green larva, boy, this took me a long time to figure out, to get it ID'd, and I needed help. But this is the 5th instar of the Ceanothus silk moth. And it is grazing on buckthorn or Ceanothus cuneatus, and that is what it will become. That's the Ceanothus silk moth. And then on the right, that is a snowberry clearwing moth, and I haven't seen that before, and it's on western wallflower, and that's a pretty beautiful moth. Okay, so now let's take a little trip over to Caddo Peak. It's another unit in the South Fork Eel Wilderness. I hiked way out the Black Mountain Trail for an hour or two and got to these open barrens. And I know it's kind of hard to see in this picture, but the gravelly area is actually a little bit light pink. And that is because it is covered with Allium falcifolium, sickle-leaved onion. And what's interesting is this is a little lighter pink, and I thought maybe it was a different species, but it really seems to fit Allium falcifolium, and at Red Mountain, it's a much darker purple color. So I don't know if that's a phenotypic expression because of the soil or why this one is a little bit lighter, but that's something I'm wondering. Here's another Clarkia gracilis with Indian clover, Trifolium albopurpureum. A little show of Castanea applegatii, Pine torum, pine wavy-leaved paintbrush. A little colony of some native California melic and Romer's fescue. And some more Kellogg's monkey flower. Take a good look at that monkey flower because I'm about to show you a mutant. So they're rare when you find them, and when you find them, it's pretty exciting. So this is a different phenotypic expression of all the genes that are hiding in this plant, but this was the only plant like this. So the dark purple corolla in this case is white. And it's pretty fun to find. And here's one I hadn't seen before, except for up on Caddo Peak, Caccaliopsis nardosima, silver crown. This is in the Asteraceae family, and it is the only species in the genus, and it's really similar to Senecio, but yeah, it extends beyond California and the Pacific Northwest, but I was surprised to see it just because I haven't seen it before. Okay, now a little pop over to Hog Hole Ridge and the Eel River Wild and Scenic Corridor. Here's Laytonville, Dos Rios. So this is our Hog Hole Ridge parcel here, and the Eel River corridor and BLM lands on each side. We have some BLM land that comes down to the river itself. So Calcordus amabilis, golden fairy lantern, and Silene laciniata, subspecies California. This is pretty common, but I just thought this was pretty striking photo for color richness. Festuca romeri and Calistigia collina venusta. I will zoom in to where you can see the Calistigia. And Castanea foliolosa, Texas paintbrush, which came back in a masticated area, which is thriving there. Didn't come back, it was just released. Oh, and here I am botanizing the wild and scenic Eel River corridor, working really hard to study the plants on the rocks along the way. Here's Iris tenuissima, slender iris. Collinsia heterophylla, Chinese houses, and some more Calcordus amabilis. I really like this one, Martin's paintbrush, Castanea applegatii subspecies. It's not Martinii, Martini? After a day of rafting, you're calling it Martini. Okay, now we're gonna pop over. Here's Leggett way over here. So we are east of Ruth Lake. And here's some delphinium. I think it's asparium. We didn't collect and identify it, but you can see, and this is Caleb Goff. He took a lot of the butterfly pictures you're seeing today. He was a Chicago Botanic Garden Conservation Land Management intern, and he's making a funny face because there's another mutant. This seemed to be the season of mutants, so we were really happy and expressive when we found a mutant. And here's some Sidalcia diploscypha, French checker mallow, and with Trichodes ornatus, the ornate checker beetle. And I think that this might be another mutation too, or just a normal variation of this plant, a phenotypic expression, but this is the same plant, and this one's white and this one's red. I mean, not the exact same plant, but the same species side by side. It's another shot of red ribbons with one sweet little dewdrop on it. Clarkia purpurea quadrivulnera again. Wyethia angustifolia, narrow-leaved mule's ear, another couple bees. Colomia grandiflora, large-flowered colomia, nice little blue anthers there. Colors. Here's another native thistle to the California flora, peregrine thistle, Cirsium cymosum cymosum, and chaparral honeysuckle, Lanicera interrupta. That's cool, we don't get that right on the coast, either of those. Okay, now we're leaving, so here's Highway 299, McKinleyville, so now we're going about 45 minutes away from our home base here to Lax Creek Management Area. This is on the east side, on the Pine Ridge side. This is Last Prairie with a really nice California fescue bunch grassland. And of course, when you get out in it, there's interstitial forbs and wildflowers. This is Fritillaria affinis or checker lily. And Senecio inigeramus, or lance tongue ragwort, covered with native pollinators. Shelton's coyote bint. And here's a nice bee hiding, Monardella sheltonii. And Copsiopsis strobelacea, California ground cone, pushing up through the soil. So cool. And this is a really grand Oregon white oak, one of my favorite trees out there over California fescue. Here's a stand of California oatgrass in the winter. And this is just another moth photo, but I found these two beautiful moths. The male is the one with the feathery antennae. And there's another shot with a little better lighting. And that's what they become. Well, that's what they are when they're open. They're huge. Gorgeous polyphemus moths. And it's sitting on California fescue and Legula comosa. And here's some other butterflies, a nice swallowtail on Pacific houndstooth on the left, Cynoglossum grandi. And this larva on the right took me some time to figure out. It's the wild forget-me-not moth larva. And let me move this again. That is what that becomes. And there's a fly. This is Oregon boxwood. I had not seen it before until we acquired the Stormy Saddle parcel in Lax Creek. It's more common in the Klamath province, and I have seen it in southern Humboldt, but a lot of people mistake it for Oregon grape, but you just got to look closer, and all the flowers are right in the axils here of the opposite leaves. Called Oregon boxwood, and it forms almost like hedgerows that can, when they get shaded out, just die all at once. This is all Oregon boxwood that died. There's another stand of giant wake robin. There's another viola, Viola sheltonii, really distinctive leaf, so you just can't miss it. And here's a few orchids, Corallorhiza striata. This is pretty common throughout our region. This one I'd say is a little more common, the striped coral root, the spotted coral root, Corallorhiza maculata. There's a typo there, it's not maculate, it should be maculata, ending with an A. And mountain piperia, Piperia transversa, a little less common. And some silvery blue butterflies on Delphinium decorum on the left, and a Western buttercup on the right. And here's another mimulus. This is, again, now Diplacus douglasii. This is called mouse ears. So the corolla isn't as complete on the lower side as it was in Kalagii. And so, yeah, this one's mouse ears for obvious reasons, just a little cutie. All right, and then let's just zip over to Eden Valley. I'm just showing off one thing here. This is Silene hookeri. This is the only place I've seen it on our BLM lands, Hooker Silene. Little different from the Bolanderi up on Butte Creek, just for comparison. And this is the South Spit around 2002, before we did some restoration and improved it with a higher density of native flowers and pollinators and whatnot. That was all through manual hand pulling of invasive non-native weeds. And it's my favorite before and after for obvious reasons. And that's it. So I will stop sharing.
Well done, Jennifer. That was awesome.
Great.
So we got a couple questions,
Hopefully
and I think people may add a few more in. First question was about the Lomatium kogholiini from Natalie Wheeler. She asked, does this plant have an animal or insect that feeds from it? Do you know the answer to that?
You know, I don't know the answer, but that's my daughter, and I'm glad she was watching.
Awesome.
I will read some more and ask Barbara if she knows the pollination biology of it, but I'm sure something is feeding on it. Actually, a A nice swallowtail, the larva of a nice swallowtail feeds exclusively on Lomatium. So maybe the swallowtail butterfly.
All right. I didn't realize she was trying to stump mom there.
Yes, that's good one. Nice.
All right, Donna Wild Earth asked a good one. I know you've been talking about a lot of these sites, and some of them aren't accessible to the public, but could you give just some suggested dates for a couple of places to visit? Some of these sites that you've shared with us.
Oh, well, I would say Butte Creek is a great place to go right now. It's May, it's popping off. You know, it's easy to get to, it's signed. You should be able to get to either Larrabee or Butte Creek, but I'd give the edge botanically to Butte Creek. There's just some more ridge lines and more exposed areas and some accessible, easy to walk under forest stands. It's a lot of that country is pretty steep, so there's just more area to explore, I think, at the Butte Creek parcel.
And
so,
the accessibility for that is out 36 and
out Highway 36, and you could probably look online for directions, but if you just go past Bridgeville and then maybe 10 minutes past Bridgeville, there'll be you'll see a Larrabee sign, and then past the Larrabee sign is a Butte Creek sign for those management areas. Also, Lax Creek is accessible, and that's a great place to go. And I mean, this is a fantastic time of year, so I'd go when the sun comes out.
Jen Feltz chiming in on the chat with all her finds out at Lax Creek this week, so it must be doing really well out there right now.
Yeah.
Okay, Jacob Smith asks, have there been any restoration efforts near the Stormy Saddle Mountain bike trailhead? And have you come across any purple dentata along that trail?
Purple dentata?
That's what he said, yeah.
I'm not sure what
I'm not sure what that is either. Yeah.
I'm not sure what that is, but there has been some restoration work when they cut in. We did plant some California fescue bunch grasses and some Bromus carinatus on some of the edges of the trail. And we do removal of Douglas-fir encroachment to maintain the oak woodlands in all the prairies up at Lax Creek. So, and I mean, we've done lots of restoration in all the prairies up there just to maintain and restore the boundary back to the 1958 era. That's when all the mechanization and basically when they put the Army military planes to work with CDF to put out fires. So fire suppression began around 1958, 1960, and then we started seeing our grassland shrink and our oak woodland shrink and displacement happening. So we've been working to restore all the prairies, but specifically on the trail, we've had some small projects to just replant some of the area that was maybe carved into just a tad more than it needed to be.
All right, Dean Taylor. Dean can
be
a tough
one.
He can be a tough customer.
Oh no!
So we're gonna have to.
It's gonna be Dean, like a cladogram question. I could feel it.
We're gonna have to email. I'll save this and we'll talk about it. But
okay.
It's a little long for this evening. But Dean, thanks for chiming in. Elizabeth Riggle says, does Darlingtonia grow on any of the sites that you've talked about?
No, there's no Darlingtonia. Red Mountain does have a fen, but there are no carnivorous plants there. I don't know why. It's great habitat, but they're not there.
Okay. All right. Jacob has corrected his comment. He said autocorrect went to purple dentata. He meant pyrola dentata.
I'm not familiar with pyrola dentata. Is that the name change? I mean, there's pyrola all over the place.
Okay.
I'd have to check. So, yes, there's pyrola out there.
Cool. And Alice Henderson asked, I believe she must be talking about the South Spit. How large was the restoration area and how long did it take to restore?
Oh, well, we started in 2004 and It is now 2020, and I would say we have manually treated about 70 acres by hand. A little over 1 mile. And the spit gets wider as you go north, so it goes slower as we progress north.
All right, Wendy Martinez, this is a great question. How can we get involved with restoration and potentially volunteer? Is there any resources for that?
Well, Friends of the Dunes actually is a great source. We have a partnership with the Friends of the Dunes, and if you want to work on, say, the Malel Dunes, they put together volunteer crews to work on the Malel Dunes. So that's very helpful because they do organize the volunteers. Otherwise, she could give our office a call, and if I got enough phone calls, I could set up a group volunteer day somewhere else. But I guess I would just want to talk to the volunteer and see what kind of weeds you're interested in treating, because generally that's the kind of botanical work that we do. If we're treating the weeds, we're also conserving the native plants. So that's always an ongoing need. Yeah.
Yeah, and that could be something that we collaborate with the North Coast chapter. So thanks, Wendy. Mm-hmm. Dan Seeley asks, what is your source for native plants for restoration?
We collect seed ourselves and have them local nurseries propagate them for us into plugs or seed increase projects. So we work a lot with Atoll Restoration Council. They have a nursery that we've helped support its inception and its growth and its maintenance. We've also worked with commercially with Samara Restoration locally, Pacific Coast Seed when we need more seed that we can't produce locally. And also there have been some other nurseries that have come and gone that were local that used local native seed, and we generally try to produce everything that we need. But we do reach out to Pacific Coast Seed, which is now S&S Seed, and also River Refuge Seed in Southern Oregon can give us some pretty regionally local acceptable seed. So that's where we go, how we do it.
Cool. All right, and I think this is a good question to end with. Samantha Miles asks, what is your favorite native plant on the North Coast?
That's my other daughter.
They ask good questions.
You know, and I have an unusual answer in that I love grasses. So I love the collective beauty of native grasses on the landscape.
Awesome.
So.
Well, Jennifer, that was really great. I'm totally inspired to see some BLM lands in the near future. And we really appreciate your time putting that presentation together a year ago now, right? But
yeah.
And yeah, for all involved, yeah, thanks for coming. We had over 140 people on average for the talk. So it's weird not to see them, but they were there, and I'm sure they enjoyed it as well. So
good.
All right. Good night, everybody.
All right. Good night.